While Grandmasters themselves haven't necessarily gotten any significant difficulty adjustments, the power of our characters have gone up considerably, making GMs nowhere near what they used to be in terms of their difficulty. And yet, I still see the same sentiments and complaints about GMs years and years later. Everything's a bullet sponge. I just die instantly. I don't know what to do. I literally haven't done anything remotely difficult the entire time I've played this game, and anything that doesn't confine to the things that I'm used to is cringe and bad. My preconceived notions about GM content is based on experience from 3 years ago. Look, I know that GMs are not necessarily everyone's cup of tea, but there's still something that I think everyone should not only try, but succeed against at least once in their career. If there's a time to try, it's right now, while we got nothing else going on, and while our power levels are at their highest. When you can understand the game at the highest of levels, I think there's a lot more to appreciate. Let's start with builds. Part of learning the GM experience is running with a strong meta build. GMs don't really care if you want to run something off meta or inefficient. They're going to just chew you up, spit you out if you don't know how to engage against stronger enemies. After talking with my community and others, here are some of the strongest setups you can bring to a GM for the rest of this season and probably future seasons. Warlocks, we'll start with you, and wouldn't you know it, Phoenix Protocol is still probably number one. There's a reason Well of Radiance is still the gold standard that it is. It allows you to nearly ignore everything going on around you for a 30-second window. But we're not just running with whatever weapons. We're throwing on Hierarchy of Needs from Spire the Watcher, and if you don't have that, you probably have Polaris Lance, and in Season of the Wish, it is cooking with all of the seasonal perks that are available that are based on precision hits, and Radiant, and Ignitions, and Scorch, and all of that. With a setup like this, you will be able to farm so much super energy that in certain areas of strikes, you will just chain your Well of Radiance back to back. If that's not exactly your style, then equipping Cenotaph or Aeons and playing more of a support role is probably the next best thing you can do. You'll be supplying your team with tons of power ammo, and you can continue to be on Well of Radiance for this, while speccing for more special ammo for yourself. You'll just need to use a Trace Rifle. If you want to practice a non-Well of Radiance setup, then Osmiomancy Stasis Warlock is a top-tier option. This plays a little bit slower than the average setup, but gives you a considerable amount of control with your Bleak Watcher grenades, freezing everything in sight. Titans, I would say that the build I ran for the past year is probably among the best, safest, and top-tier options, which is Strand Titan with Quicksilver Storm. This setup gives you a solid amount of crowd control with suspend effects, even though they aren't as strong as they used to be, but more importantly is that it's not an ability or combo-focused setup. It uses strong meta weapons, and it focuses on the use of those weapons. Beyond that is probably Lorelei Solar Titan for safety purposes and restoration, and making sure you have some kind of oh crap feature built into your character so that you don't die. Otherwise, something like an Ursa Furiosa Void Titan is a bit outdated, but is still a relatively safe choice if you want to change things up a little bit. Hunters, you have 3 different Void exotics to play with depending on what you want to do: Orpheus Rig, Omnio, or Gerfalcon. Orpheus Rig is a support style setup that allows you to constantly shoot quivers at large groups of enemies, making them much easier to kill than usual, and supply a high amount of orbs to your team. It also allows you to use your super considerably more often, provided you use it in smart locations, which will come with experience. Omnioculus is for people maybe still getting comfortable with the pace of play, and allows you to make yourself and your team invisible very frequently. This is great in order to be able to revive people safely, or rotate you or your team to a safer position. Gerfalcon is for going on the offensive, giving you more individual power for fighting against enemies, but also revolves around coming in and out of invisibility. There's a little bit of team support potential with the exotic, but you're mainly going to be focused on slaying out when you're using Gerfalcon. For most people, I would say drift towards Omnioculus at first until you get used to the experience, then push into Orpheus Rig, as Orpheus is an exotic that only affects your super and you can just use guns otherwise. When you're ready to step out of Void and into something else, Celestial Nighthawk got a massive upgrade in a recent patch, and the entire build revolves around getting as many supers as possible to use as a delete button for champions. You don't have the safety of invisibility, which is why I would recommend trying it out once you've gotten more familiar with Grandmaster gameplay. These are the top builds for GMs for people who are still getting used to GMs, whether you're just playing bad, or you're new, or you're wanting to learn, or you're inexperienced. Try not to deviate too far from these setups while you're learning. Also, please check out my guide on how to build your armor sets. There are so many tools out there that make the process simple and will optimize everything for you in about 3 to 5 minutes of work. Aim for high resilience most of all, and make sure you have resistance mods, not unflinching mods, in your chest armor. Now, when I was doing my coaching series a while back, unfortunately, I really did not get that many people to submit their gameplay for review, and that goes double for Grandmaster Nightfall gameplay reviews. I think I got 2, maybe 3 total GMs ever submitted. So instead, I hosted a Q&A on my stream for people who are inexperienced with GMs, and here's some of the advice that I gave. That being said, I am still very much interested in reviewing gameplay, so if you want to record your gameplay of you or your team struggling in a GM experience, please upload the footage to YouTube and then send me the link on Twitter. I've said many times before that 90% of the Grandmaster experience is preparation. GMs are simply a game of memorization. If you can memorize the key moments in each strike, if you can remember where champions spawn, where certain enemy packs are located, that is 90% of the work right there. And the remaining 10% is just playing through it. The problem is that this memorization can take a lot of time, and people don't want to invest that time into learning spawns and champions. But you can't hop into GM content and get Men in Black flashbanged every single time you enter the GM. You need to retain some amount of information, and the more you retain, the easier GMs will become. Enemies spawn in the same spots, in the same amounts, and behave the same way every single time. There is zero variation in most experiences. There are maybe 1 or 2 battleground GMs that have a few more enemies or non-stop spawning enemies during certain encounters, but that's it. You can memorize everything, and memorization is 90% of the battle. I am capable of doing what I do because I know what's about to happen every time. Regular strikes in the Vanguard playlist can help to a very small degree because the enemies in a regular strike are pretty much the same as in the GM in terms of how many will spawn and where. You just don't get to learn where the champions are, and you don't get the vital experience of fighting against enemies that are much higher level than you. Speaking of that, start playing against higher level enemies if you've never done it before. The coil is an amazing place to learn because it slowly dials up the difficulty of enemies, and if you're consistently getting to the final wave of the coil, then you're really only a couple of clicks away from Grandmaster level enemies. Legend Law Sectors are another decent spot to learn. The difference is that you're just going to be by yourself, but honestly, hopping into a Master Law Sector as a group of 3 newbies is basically a miniature GM experience. It's not going to take as long, it's not as punishing, although the loot incentives are not really there, but you're not there for the loot, you're there to learn. I hear it all the time. I'm too squishy, I get one shot. You guys think I have more HP than you? I have the same amount of HP as all of you do. I don't even rock 100 resilience on my Titan, I have 80. You're not squishy. You just don't know how to fight these enemies, and the only way you're going to learn is with a little bit of practice. Resilience does matter for some things though. Class ability cooldown for Titan, Well of Radiance health for Warlock. You should try to max out your resilience if possible. Let's continue the prep. You have your build, you probably have your armor set up, you have some experience with higher level enemies. What guns are you bringing? Here's what not to bring. Legendary scouts and pulses, which I feel like are the weapons of choice for people who say that enemies are too spongy or have too much health. Bungie has said time and time again, scouts are not going to do a lot of damage because they allow you to play very safely, and pulses are just kinda bad. I know it seems counterintuitive to run a shorter range weapon in a GM, but the best defense in Destiny is a good offense, and being able to kill things faster means they won't be able to hurt you for as long of a time. If you do want to run long distance weapons, run an exotic bow besides Trinity Ghoul, because Trinity Ghoul isn't as smooth in GMs versus non-GM content. Hand cannons have also gotten substantially better to the point where I use one in GM content every so often, depending on my build. I'm sorry that you can't use the exact items you want, but you're still learning, you're still inexperienced. It's like learning chess. There are rules that you need to adhere to when you're first starting out and when you're first learning, and only when you know what you're doing are you allowed to break those rules. The same thing applies here. Put the servant leader away, put the messenger away, put on something else. So what do I actually recommend then? When you're first learning, exotic primary weapon. Pick one. Pick almost any one. I don't even care if it's a scout or a pulse. It's easier to say what I don't recommend. I would rather you use Thorn than a legendary scout rifle. I would rather you use Suros Regime than a legendary pulse. I would rather you use Sweet Business than a legendary bow. That one's maybe more 50-50. The number one thing I will continue to recommend until it gets nerfed into the ground is Quicksilver Storm, because it's every weapon type in one. It's a primary, it's a special, and it's a power weapon, and it does all three things really, really well. Exotic bows are next in line. If you want to use a scout rifle, pick up Polaris Lance this season. I know you haven't touched it in 5 years. It's cooking. Exotic primaries do a considerable amount of damage more than their legendary counterparts. This buff happened years ago as a way to promote their use more in the meta. It's going to cut down dramatically on your time spent killing off junk tier enemies. It's also going to help your ammo management. People feel like their primary weapons are weak, so they use all of their power ammo on enemies that don't need or deserve it. Then they run out of it immediately, and then you don't have it for when you do actually need it. Or you could run Cenotaph or Aeons on your team, and then you can just run a power weapon permanently. Also, no double primary. One primary only. Coordinate with your group ahead of time to figure out who's doing what. When it comes to champions, I have a great video on how to deal with champions, but if possible, you should 100% be utilizing subclass effects in order to deal with champions to some degree. The only anti-barrier this season is sidearm. And I know y'all ain't running sidearms. You think everyone is using Wish Ender and Arbalest? They're using Radiant. You get near permanent Radiance this season for just shooting a gun a couple of times at an enemy in the head. Use the tools that the game gives you. You don't need every anti-champion effect on every single weapon. Okay, we're prepped. We got a build. We got guns. We're hopping into the GM itself. How are we actually playing the content? The number one thing is that you are going to need to use cover way more often than you use it right now. You need to think about your positioning because it actually matters now. You want to be fighting from behind boxes and crates. You want to be more careful about transitioning from cover to cover. You need to be more aware of the enemies around you. This is something that's just going to take some time to get used to. You're not going to just will this knowledge into existence. You need to play. Next, use your super. I know a lot of people like to save their super for emergencies. Last person standing, I want to go get a res, but I promise you, if you have a decent build and you're all using your supers regularly on your team, you will get it back so much faster than you realize. If you're saving your super for the final boss all the time, you're doing it wrong. Start getting more comfortable with using your super more, even if it's just for ad clear. It's going to make the experience that much easier for you. Another thing that I like to do is prioritizing smaller, weaker enemies over bigger targets if it can be helped. The reason is because I know the big enemy is a threat. We know the unstoppable ogre is a threat. But people tend to not view the weaker enemies as a threat because they have a red health bar, and red bar enemies are typically not a threat. I've probably been killed by more red bar enemies than I have bosses or champions, and if I haven't, the ratio is probably pretty close. Red bar enemies can be nearly as lethal as the bigger enemies, but they are killed much faster. By reducing their numbers, you give yourself more space to fight against the bigger threats. 15 acolytes, 3 knights, and a barrier champion. What am I trying to kill first? 15 acolytes, every time, especially if they got elemental shields. Just chain those shields. Now, sometimes there's a champion in your face, there's an enemy in your face. You got to take care of it. That's fine. But if you can help it, kill weaker enemies first, because 2 to 3 of them are going to deal the same damage as one big target, but they're way easier to kill. Finally, I know I've seen my fair share of, I will literally self-invert from anxiety if I even consider the fact that I'm playing with another human being posts. But man, are GMs that much easier if you can communicate to other people about what you're doing, or if you can at least listen to someone else telling you what to do. Focus fire a champion, rotate over here, calling out to a teammate. Whatever it is, try to get in voice chat. I think this is all the more generic advice I can give. So if you, the viewer, would like to chime in with some of your own advice, feel free. But that's all I got. Again, if you're someone who struggles with GM content, your group struggles with GM content, maybe you struggle with Legend or Master Law sectors, I would love to review your gameplay. This is a judgment-free zone. I'm not here to make fun of you if you're willing to say that you want some help, because I want to help you. Because if I can help you, then I can help more people, and then maybe one day I'll stop hearing all the complaining about battleground GMs, because battleground GMs are great, but we're not ready for that conversation. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.